On behalf of Ukrainian Canadian Art Foundation, I'm happy to welcome all of you here on our last session this season of Ukrainian contemporary diaspora and emigre literature. And today we have an exciting meeting with poetry. Olena Jennings, author and translator from US, will be reading from her latest book. And here my name is Uliana Hlynchak, and I am the head of the programming committee at the UCAF. And to introduce Olena to us, I invite Ghrai's Maghony, who's joining us from the States as well. And Ghrai's Maghony is a Ph.D. candidate in the Department of Slavic Languages and Literatures at the University of Michigan. In 2014 and 15, she participated in the US Fulbright program in Ukraine as a student researcher. She serves as a series editor of the Lost Horse Press Contemporary Ukrainian Poetry series. Her book of translations of Irina Starovoit's Poetry, A Field of Foundlings, was published by Lost Horse Press in 2017. Along with Dr. Oleg Kotsuba and Dr. Jessica Zegovich, she is a co-editor of the Forum on Race and Postcolonialism for Kritika. With Jessica Zegovich, she is the co-curator of the art and poetry exhibit I Have a Crisis for You. Women Artists of Ukraine Respond to War. Прошу, пані Грейс.
Дякую. Доброго дня усім. I'm very grateful to have the honor and pleasure of introducing the program featuring Olena Jennings today. In addition to her work as a poet, prosaist, editor, and translator, Jennings is a textile artist. We can see her work on the cover of her book of poetry, the dress here, The Age of Secrets, which was published by Lost Horse Press in 2022. And while sewing and its attending imagery proves a potent set of tropes in Jennings's writing, we can also think of its resonance with her writing practice as a whole, as she weaves together American and Ukrainian cultures and their languages in a thoughtful and deep felt tapestry of the Ukrainian American experience. Today's program showcases the reach of Jennings's work in poetry as an English language writer and a translator from Ukrainian. In the first part, we will hear Jennings read from her book, The Age of Secrets, from which two poems will be presented in Ukrainian translation by Oksana Lebedivna. In the second part of the program, Jennings will read her translations from Ukrainian poetry of Vasyl Makhno, Anna Malehon, and Yulia Musokovska. For my introduction today, I will first discuss Jennings's English language collection and then move to an introduction of her translation work. The Age of Secrets is framed through the relationship between two lyric I's, Natalie and Aja. Just as the yearnings of lust and love prove dangerous to Natalie and Aja's self-preservation, so too does the past, does personal memory. The glint in a pair of scissor blades in mother's hands threaten to cut the fabric of our beings. A kitchen knife meant for beets slices the hand, yielding the same blood red that dots embroidered linens. These wounds leave scars of memory that become proof of the past, of stolen lives, isolated in migration. The urban world of Age of Secrets is marked by artificiality. Styrofoam cups, goldfish in plastic bags, neon lights, and fake flowers. Relationships can be faulty too, as faces are forgotten by lovers and inner lives are never revealed. The memory of a lost homeland creeps in through portraits of poets and echoes of a place of the real and living. Vibrant blossoms, verdant pastures, and deep fresh lakes are visible but unreachably encased in paintings and films. Jennings's Ukraine manifests as a different reality juxtaposed with Americana. Borscht is the dish of the choice in the poem titled American Breakfast. And the poem titled My Ukraine takes place in a church in Milwaukee. And yet there's a turn here. The church of community proves the heart of so much of what has been preceding in the poems that have been reaching for, what they have been reaching for. and the prayer-like repetitive stanzas that weave through the lyric meditations. The task of the gathered Ukrainian community is organizing aid. As Nicole Yerkaba notes, Russia's war in Ukraine gradually seeps into this poetry collection as a billow of smoke that brings history and memory into a collision with the present. In addition to her own writing, Jennings is an accomplished translator, especially of contemporary Ukrainian poetry. Her translations have been featured in a number of journals and anthologies. Her book-length publications include Pray to the Empty Wells, co-translated with the author Irina Shuvalova, and Nobody Knows Us Here and We Don't Know Anyone, poetry of Kateryna Kalytko, co-translated with Oksana Lutsashina. Both of these titles are part of the Lost Horse Press Contemporary Ukrainian Poetry series. Today, she will read her translations of Vasyl Makhno that can be found in the 2022 collection Paper Bridge from Plamen Press. Makhno is a well-known poet, prosaist, essayist, and translator with over 14 collections of poetry to his name. Of Paper Bridge, Valzhina Mort writes, Makhno is a master of the contemporary Ukrainian ballad who builds a lifeline for broken-hearted wanderers, homeless heartbreakers, hopeless romantics, and insightful ironists. Jennings will also read her translations of Yulia Musakovska, an accomplished Lviv-based poet whose lyrical mastery places her at the cutting edge of contemporary Ukrainian poetry. Jennings and Musakovska are working on a forthcoming collection from Aerosmith Press titled The God of Freedom. And then Jennings will also read a recent publication from Nell Journal of Anna Malahun titled Don't Go Out for Water. All of Jennings' accomplishments demonstrate the incredible artistic community she has knit together across continents, and I am excited for the opportunity to celebrate her work today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pani Mahoney. And it was very interesting and beautiful artwork, by the way, on the book cover. And without further ado, I invite Olena Jennings listening to your poetry. Thank you.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction, and it was very touching, Grace. I'm going to start by reading from The Age of Secrets, which was published in September 2022. And I will be reading from the second section, which is called The Spell of History. The book includes two sections. One, Paper Doll Album, is, as Grace mentioned, the relationship between two girls, Natalie, Asia, and a third narrator. But I'll be focusing on The Spell of History, which is more about memory, things Ukrainian, and history. I will start with the poem Unraveling. I am dreaming that clothes are coming apart. There is a sudden need for needles and thread. There are buttons on the floor like seashells. We try to make the outdoors in our living rooms. I have a measuring tape around my neck. I have a single pin between my teeth. The outside comes in. I brace myself like for a wave. Everything comes to me in pieces. I put it together. The clamoring of the sewing machine, squinting at the thread to make sure it goes straight into the needle, the vintage fabrics smelling of strange closets, the comfort of the fabric rubbed against my cheek, the metallic flavor of pins. Everything comes to me in pieces. From the outside that has been closed to us come velvet, silk, cotton. I stick my head out the window wearing fancy dresses, dressed for myself. In this isolation, we live for ourselves. We have long conversations with mirrors. The pain is almost erased. We forget what it was like to go out. The sun shines more often when I am home. It does so to tempt me. We establish a dialogue, the sun and I. I put out my bare arms. I ask for the sun to warm me, for a careful caress. I learn to be touched by something so far away. I learn what distance really is. My friends have also fallen into the landscape of their apartments. We whisper to each other. We stick our ears out the window and attempt to hear the voice. The next poem is called Poppies, and it was written after some plastic poppies that my grandmother always used to keep on her dresser. And she said they reminded her of the Ukrainian landscape. Poppies. Red and blue on the dresser, dust in the folds, stretching towards the dim lamp. Click of lipstick cap, spritz of perfume, snap of clutch, and she will turn the light off. The flowers will wither into their dreams, and I will put my lips into their centers, ready to blow away pollen, the yellow dust caught in my eyes. When I see for a moment from her perspective, I look out onto the yard. I see myself throwing a rubber ball into the flowers, crushing their petals, the place where I convinced my brother there was a snake, that there was something to fear. To make up for my deception, I gave him one of the plastic flowers, deceiving him again, pretending I bought it at the corner gas station, from which we had collected all of our dishes with the points we got from pumping gas. I want to make up more than that now. Absences, when I would become like that yellow dust, a quiet star. And the next one is part of a 2-poem series, Red Rue and Cervena Ruta. And so I'll read Red Rue. We imagined that flowers could change their colors, red, becoming a pulsing figure, so that it was a myth, something to search for. And then there were the rewards. If you found it, you would also find your match. If you found it, you would also find luck. But our hands are black with soil, but our feet are bloody with the earth. We wrote songs about it. If we couldn't find it in real life, to stand in vases on windowsills, we would find it in the words sung to the guitar while I waited for a ride home. The search too much, so that maybe there was the purpose of looking, to find myself in the place I started. And next is a poem that Grace mentioned in her introduction, American Morning. My mother cooked from a space inside, pressed together with the hot air of borscht, looking for lives in beet red newspapers, looking for our lives against the backdrop of the bell. A man's hands wrapped around the rope, the echo in our chests and the incense wafting towards us, dipping my fingers into the soft varnish of the pew, pretending I am in the back garden, soil beneath my nails. On our knees before cucumbers, wiping prickly skin, tempted. The raspberries failed. They weren't part of our past. I could only find one. We tried to push our way into the future, fruit breaking from solitude, the cucumbers in the middle seat of the Oldsmobile as we took a wrong turn, blinded by the sun. And next, this poem is a little different from the previous poems in that it also chronicles a relationship. It's called Split. I'm unfolding the dresses. The red one is for fresh starts. I am outside myself as the dogs chase cars. My car moves away and part of me is left behind. Those pieces are scrubbing dishes. Those are pushing my body into routine. The new are writing in the dark and coming close to me with petals of wine floating on their breath. I weave their promises between veins. They are part of me like prayers from the past I repeat when there is hurt. Hurt exists in the temporary, when it is all slipping. The city is slipping, its streets rugs pulled out. Her kiss slides down my cheek like a tear, but her words slip into my mouth. They escape when I sit across from him at the dinner table. I am careless with them. She has given them to me to do what I want with, and for him they have the jagged edges of her past. Those edges fit inside mine. His fork clangs against the plate. It is the chime of his departure. The door is open, the gap large and small, enough for her to enter. The next poem, Home, is part of a project I did called the Memory Project, in which I used photographs and old family photographs and wrote poems about them, and also did some textile art and showed everything at Queens Farm, which is a farm, surprisingly, right in the city in Queens. So this is the poem. It's called Home. Let me give you my old address, so that if you are in the neighborhood, you can drive by, see if they've repainted. You might also see someone I used to know. Maybe eventually we will see each other. Let me give you my address so that you can find it on a map, so that at least you will know where I came from. At least someone will know where I came from. On the map, it's the pale orange shape next to the light blue of the water, where I walked on the wet sand, dragging a stick, drawing a line that would lead back. And the final two poems start with Seamstress in War. She moved the needle through the fabric. The sewing machine was sometimes the only sound coming from within the house, more staccato than the intermittent shots outside. The sound of her own textile was her imagination in thread. She remembered when she had started to make her own clothes. She made a dress for a date. It was the red her grandmother hated because it stood out in the desolate streets where the buildings cried, drops of water falling down windows, dew on the shingles. They went to a cafe and someone opened her purse and stole the last of her coins, still warm with her hands. It was more than a purse. It was her body opened up and taken, thin thievery. It was then that she started to make collections. She collected buttons. She collected pill cases. She collected foreign coins. She collected red lipsticks. She collected vials of perfume. She collected gum in silver wrappers. She collected spare keys. She collected safety pins. She collected passports. Now I would like to introduce my friend Oksana Labedina, who will read the translation, her translation of this poem. We met through a mutual friend, Vasyl Makhno, a while ago, a few years ago. And Oksana was organizing a Ukrainian American poetry happening, which took place at Antisha, the Shevchenko Scientific Society in New York City. And it involved poetry and music. And so I'm very honored that she could be here today to read the translation. Oksana?
Thank you, Olena. I just would like to intercede for a second and introduce Oksana Lebedevna. She's joining us right now from the Edinburgh in Scotland, and she's a PhD candidate in Kyiv-Mogilянська Academia, and she's working on the topic, studies the topic of historical dialectology and the development of the Ukrainian phonological system. Thank you, Oksana, for joining us.
Thank you, Olena, and thanks, Pani Uliana. Thanks, Olena, for trusting me with your poems. It's an honor and absolute pleasure to work with them. Кравчиня під час війни. Вона просунула голку крізь тканину. Швейна машинка іноді буває єдиним звуком, іноді бувала єдиним звуком, що виходив зсередини дому, різкіший, ніж переривчасті вистріли зовні. Звук текстилю був її уявою в нитці. Вона пам'ятала, коли почала шити власний одяг. Вона пошила сукню на побачення. Червоний, якого не могла терпіти її бабуся, бо він виділявся на тлі спустошених вулиць, де будівлі плачуть, краплі води, що спадають із вікон, роса на черепицях. Вони пішли в кафе, і хтось відкрив її сумочку, вкрав останні монети, все ще теплі від її рук. Це було більше, ніж сумочка. Це було її тіло, відкрите і взяте, витончена крадіжка. І з того часу вона почала брати, створювати колекції. Вона збирала гудзики, вона збирала коробочки для пігулок, вона збирала іноземні монети, вона збирала червоні помади, вона збирала флакони для парфумів, вона збирала жувальні гумки в срібних обгортках, вона збирала зайві ключі, вона збирала шпильки, вона збирала паспорти.
Menagerie. He held the cat that his wife had reflected in embroidery, forming a face in French knots. The turning of the thread 3 times, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The meow resounded in the rubble like a folk song, words long forgotten, a woman's voice lost in the air. The neighbor, always in bare feet, stepped like a saint over crumbled walls. He said a prayer over the body of an animal. A bird flew by and perched on the shards of a dish. It was red, a beacon. His feet bled, leaving a trail that led towards home.
Звіринець. Він тримав кота, що його дружина зобразила на вишивці, вишивши лице французькими вузликами. Обертання нитки 3 рази. Отець, Син, Дух Святий. Няу пролунало на уламках, як народна пісня, слова давно забуті, загублений у повітрі жіночий голос. Сусід, завжди босий, ступив, мов святий, на стіни розтрощені. Він промовив молитву над тілом тварини. Пташка пролетіла повз і сіла на уламки тарілки. Була червоною. Маяк. Його ступні закровоточили, залишили за собою слід у бік дому.
Thank you very much, Oksana. Next, I'm going to focus on some translations. I'm going to start with Vasyl Makhno's work. I met Vasyl Makhno when I moved to New York City in 2004, but it was not until the time of the pandemic that I began translating his work. And we did this book, Paper Bridge. It If you read Paper Bridge in Ukrainian, it is a different book than Paper Bridge in English because Vasyl gave me the freedom to choose which poems would be part of it. Vasyl's writing has a focus on place. He writes not only about Ukraine or New York City where he lives, but also about places like Paris, Nicaragua, and Tbilisi. He bridges the places in the book with narrative and imagination. These places become dear to him, leaving memories that become poems. The title poem, Paper Bridge, speaks of the ability of writing to connect us. The addressee in many of the poems is assumed to be the poet's beloved, but can also be the reader. This is a bridge Vasyl creates that enables the reader to step into the poems. According to Ilya Kaminsky, who wrote the introduction to the book, this is the kind of poetry that has lived among humans since time immemorial. And it is here in these pages, a kind of poetry that we need, a kind that helps us go on. So I'll just read two poems from the book. The first is Paper Bridge. Paper Bridge. Here is a room, a chair and a bare table. You can't carry it on your back or cover it with a manuscript or hide it. Sleep frees me. Stop writing. Outside the door, August is ablaze. Sand flies into the room. Here is a road, the Long Island Railroad. I choke on the air in my mouth. Somewhere ahead is the earth's edge, Montauk, and the beach is like a manuscript, a world covered with living and dead seagulls, their nests buried in the sand. Here is the book I am writing for myself. I write at night, lying in the grass, collecting pages in the morning. I search for a thread or stones or words. The train station, burnt grass. It's all the same, a conductor or a customs agent. Here, the shadow of the table is carried out, then a chair, and then grass, cutting across the floors, walls, and concrete. Wings rustle, paper crackles. In the seagull's eyes, blue sapphire. In the hawk's eyes, mother of pearl. And you carry your manuscript towards the train station. Here the train runs past stones and birds' nests, past letters and pages, to underground wells and celestial rivers, as you build a bridge out of paper. The next poem I'll read is one of my favorites. I like it because it's so cinematic, or it feels very cinematic to me. It's called Nettle. I know the nettle blooms late, rains. I forgot the keys to the Toyota and to the house. No one looked for me, not even women. Ground beetles laid their larvae. Dill was planted in the fields, then potatoes. I wasn't there for one or the other. I hid in the city I loved, for even because of the chestnut candelabras, the fluffy cotton, the buzzing of mother of pearl flies, the swaying trains passing, the yellow milkweed, the swarming bees, and the sweet strawberries. My mother and my father, the driver, waited for me. They sat along the shore near the water, almost like Bergman's wild strawberries. My mother's smile was so distant, I hid behind the trunk of an old pine and wondered, is it them or not? I hid in the thicket of green nettle. I moved into the nettle to smoke. I chose the nettle. I was afraid of my mother, who traced my fox-like footprints, and the blood on the nettle green and oily, her eyes scouring for me, and the river, early rains above the city, and on the river, and on my blue heart, scars and bruises. The rain showed me no mercy. The nettle stung. Mother called to me, worried from the river. If you smoke, you won't grow strong, and you won't be able to carry the river with you. Next, I'll move on to Yulia Musakovska. who I met at the book forum in Lviv right before the pandemic. And we've been translating her book, The God of Freedom, together. And her book, The God of Freedom, is built around the concept of freedom reflected in various aspects, whether it be the independence of one's country, freedom of self-fulfillment, or preserving one's true self in a relationship. It features poetic stories of growth, struggle, and transformation caused by the divine force of freedom, which is believed to be dwelling in every human being. And the two poems I'll read come from a book called In the Hour of War, edited by Carolyn Forche and Ilya Kaminsky. So this is the first poem by Yulia Musakovska. The Vow. Do you take this man with his extreme sense of justice, with his broken sleep, his dual nature, one of his faces an oasis and the other a sandstorm, with wrinkles scattered around his eyes when he smiles, with his head full of complex numbers, casual connections, details of precise accuracy? Do you take this man to be quiet with him more often than talk, the silence be more valuable than any conversation? Do you take this man to burst into all-night diners, to peel an apple and touch a delicate vinyl record with two pairs of hands, to wrap your leg around him as if a tree trunk, to part as butter beneath a knife, to revolve around your axis to light his way? Do you promise to insert and take out needles, to rip off and put on bandages, to freeze disputes, to not pour too much milk into his coffee, to withstand unbearably long pauses when he turns his back, to kiss as greedily as if choking on water on a hot day? Do you take this woman with her maladjusted mechanics, concealed scars, with her collection of hearts in the pocket of her dress, with her pile of errands that never get smaller, with her dyslexia, holes in her memory, her bitten lip, with her big purse that holds random items and a lot of freedom? Do you take this woman without reading her poems, without reprimanding her, to get angry with her but chase her fears away, to revel in the faults that her perfection is made of, to preserve your day's plan when you're together? Do you promise to tiptoe around when she's carrying out her ideas, to come as a peacemaker to her hot spots, to stray from the right path with her, to enter into arguments and philosophical disputes while never stopping to grow into each other? In a rented Soviet-era apartment and on a crowded local train and in the attic of your parents' house and in your own home with large windows and white walls and in a hospital ward filled with desperation and hope and in a hotel room where the sea replaces the floor, until nothing do you part. The next poem by Yulia Musakovska is called Such Love. Such love it is, a hot lump in your throat. It is without any half-tones or relative meanings, loved not half-heartedly, but with the full sun and sea. It is loved hyacinth-like, violet-like, and unconditionally. It is so uncovered and raw like an early morning. It is so striking you can't tell if it heals or wounds. It has been promised your knees go weak and your armor is broken. It is like a long-awaited train stop that you miss on purpose. It is like a roar and a voice amidst it saying, it's just a thunderstorm. It is like a street musician that has been slaughtered at Pidzamshe. It is like ram boats and rivers that have gone shallow, like 155 children deprived of their father's care, like the names of the lost places where you are never tired of saying, like the highest grace and the worst curse, like the black grass bird's nest turned to ashes and the whisper of the void. Such love it is, which has grown deep into you and will never let go. And the final translations are of Anna Malihon's work. I got in touch with her when I translated her chapbook, Burnt Skin, for the New York City Poetry Festival already many years ago. And ever since then, I've really been enjoying her poetry. She has very vivid imagery, and that's kind of combined with juxtaposed with some quiet imagery. So I really enjoy that about her poetry. And I'm going to read a poem I translated for journal Nell, and my response to that poem. So this is Anna's poem. Don't go out for water. Don't go out for water. Drink drops from the walls of your underground shelter. You become lighter, almost like a hummingbird, though hummingbirds drink 100 times a day. The world's moisture in the eyes of survivors. In their minds, they tie their hands and lie on the roadsides as punctuation marks without text. Foreigners will call these pine-filled spaces Hollywood and wash flags from our houses in laundromats, and will place dirty lies into the open beaks of their enemy brats and the nice blood-soaked teddy bears and voices from the underground shelter. Don't go out for water. Drain yourself to a critical point. I see the heart through the hole in the body of a girl. Say this on camera. And the medic is no longer willing to say anything. And what if the pines could speak? They bought a swimsuit for their daughter that summer. Take it. Maybe somebody can use it. And the volunteer handles it like a living thing. You are the last one left in the shelter, the last one left on this earth. When you come out, no one will be there. You don't want to drink anymore. And like an infant, the spring earth sucks the bitter milk of dead ladybugs. And this is my response to that poem. It's called Childhood Shelter. We rode our bikes through the tunnel, parting the darkness. It wasn't supposed to exist there in the city, but there were other shelters, the pigeon coop and the warm garage with puddles of glistening oil. We drank the water from the hose after it was turned off, and there were only drops left. Then we hid in the basement from the tornado, trying on the old dresses from storage and clattering around in heeled shoes, walking over the drain pipe, our eyes bulged with the sight of water. We found safety in the places that hit us. On the phone, mother talks about war. We found safety in the darkness that made us invisible. We found safety from the news. The wind gusted through the rain, rustling it like hair, drops parting against the sidewalk. We felt water course through our bodies like waves, our bodies the beach. Maybe you will find shelter in us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olena. Bravo. Thank you for taking us on a journey, on a beautiful journey of your poetry and translations. And right now, I would like to invite our audience to ask questions. Olena is here. Fire away, ask questions. We are open to discussions. And okay, lovely. We have a comment from Dodson to everyone. And before we start questions, I would like to read you. There's one comment on Facebook under our broadcast from Helena Kostyuk. It's fabulous poem. Nostalgic and palpable memories bring us to the past, tightly connected to our days. Okay. Thank you, Pani Helena. Thank you, Pani Olena. Anyone has a question? Go ahead. Okay, before we start questions, and there's another comment in the chat, or actually, and the question: distance and memory time are bridged in your work through the tapestries of your words, where the metaphors of thread colors often appear. Have you found that your personal, visual, textile, and verbal art forms are in fact in conversation? And this is the question from Pani Uliana Pizzamecki.
Thank you for the question, Pani Uliano. I definitely think that they are in conversation. So the first part of my book, The Age of Secrets, is Paper Doll Album. And in fact, that came from a small exhibition that I did at a gallery here called Bliss on Bliss. And what I did was I took the first longer poem. It's about 12 pages long. And I picked out images from there that I felt like could possibly be made into textiles or into clothing. So for example, there was one of the first images was a purple suit. So I did a purple suit jacket that was a little bit off because the person I was writing about was a little bit kind of off psychologically and mentally. So the suit was this kind of the same way. But yeah, so they're definitely in conversation.
Thank you. And now I see Ola Khometa is holding her hand up. And go ahead, Ola.
Olena, thank you so much for this luxurious experience to hear the poet reading her own works. It's always so special. Thank you. I wonder, how do you select Ukrainian poetry that you'd like to translate? So how do you work with your translations? How do you build this collection? Yeah, maybe you can just tell us a little bit of your history of your translation work.
Well, I feel the poetry kind of partially comes to me, and then I feel inspired by it, and then do the translation. But I started translation with the writer Natalka Bilocerkiewicz when I was studying at the University of Alberta. And I did some of her translations of some of her poems in my thesis. And then I would say I wasn't that comfortable with translation, and I wasn't that aware of how many Ukrainian poets actually are out there and writing so much wonderful work. These three poets that I read from today. So I knew Vasyl personally, so I had been reading his poems and going to his readings for a while and really, really liking them and connecting with them. And when I met Yulia Musakovska at the book forum, she gave me her book and her latest book, and I read that and really loved it. And so when she asked me if I might want to work with her on The God of Freedom, I was really excited about it.
I have a follow-up question on just what is the most challenging when you're doing the translation?
I think that each writer has their different challenge. I think the biggest challenge is to keep the music because I feel like Ukrainian is a very musical language, and it's difficult to keep the rhythm and the meaning at once. So I find that sometimes you have to kind of play with the meaning.
Especially Makhno, he has a rhythm in every poem, right?
Yes, he does. Yeah, we did. I was just telling Alex before we came on that we did a reading with Vasyl on Friday, and that was so apparent that I read Vasyl read his original, and then I read the translation, and there was part of me at first that was trying to mimic what he was reading, the way he was reading, but then I thought, no, the English is actually came out different. So I kind of fell into my own way of reading, which kind of reflected the translation being done differently than the original.
Thank you. Alex, go ahead, please.
Hi, hello. Hi, Olena.
Hi.
Jeremy. Thanks for the reading, both for your original poetry and the translations. It's a nice combination. I appreciate it. I was privileged to read the book in the manuscript. I mean, the Age of Secrets, and I became absolutely addicted to the materiality and the multiplicity of objects and memorial objects, almost this unhealthy addiction to the collection, to these objects, and then memorizing and inscribing these memories embodied in these objects in your poems, which is very much appealing to me. And I also like very much the very gentle touch in the Ukrainian theme in this book, in your original poetry. It's not a bold one, and it's not a main theme, but it's ever present. So congratulations on the book and on the forthcoming book of translations, which is great. And just to add that I already translated a couple of poems from this Olena's book to Hebrew, which hope will be published sometime very soon. So thanks.
Wow, that's very exciting. That means we have to have another session. Very exciting, Alex.
Could I just say one thing to kind of bounce off what Alex was saying? Yeah, I really like how you put it, the addiction to objects. I actually have a poem which you will remember in the collection called Collection, in which the narrator becomes very obviously addicted to different objects. So that's something really struck a chord with me.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Olena. And okay, I don't see any questions from the audience. Uliana Pidzametsky is writing, Olena, the poetic collective is so alive in your work, and this is a great additional accomplishment.
Oh, thank you.
So what are your plans in the near future? What are you working now on?
Well, hopefully we'll do some readings around Yulia Musakovska's book when it's published in, I guess, early next year. And I'm working on a new novel. So that's one thing. It has a slight Ukrainian theme, but as Alex mentioned, it's not like the main theme, but it's there in the background.
Oh, very interesting. So бажаємо вам успіху. Good luck with that.
Дякую дуже.
And so I think I will thank everyone who's in our audience and who was watching us on Facebook. Thank you for joining. This was a beautiful session. Thank you, Olena, once again for taking us on the journey to your poetry and translations. I would like, I'm sorry, Grace has raised her hand. Go ahead, Grace.
I was just applauding.
Okay, sorry, my bad. Petrolo Patra is doing thumbs up. I just want to thank everyone, and thank you, Grace, for a beautiful introduction. And thank you, Pani Olena, for reading your poetry and translations. Thank you to everyone. I need to thank our sponsors, Delta Bingo, our Ukrainian television program Kontakt, for being our media sponsor, and Alex Tarayev and IG Wealth Management for organizing these wonderful Zoom sessions for us. Our next event in the gallery is happening on April 23rd. We invite you to celebrate the presentation by Anishinaabe artist Brian Wabuz and he will be presenting his painting dedicated to the heroic stand of the Ukrainian people. And this is happening in the gallery on April 23rd. And this is for everyone in Toronto, but we will be broadcasting this live. So anyone who's interested and who's interested in our programs, please join our Facebook page. And you can also connect to our mailing list, and you could join us virtually. We would be happy to have you. So again, thank you everyone for being with us today. Holly Eaton is writing beautiful. Olena, congrats, bravo. And so once again, Olena, a round of applause to you from everyone. And have a nice Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Слава Україні.
Героям слава. Дякую.
Дякую, до побачення, до зустрічі.